Hi, everyone. Welcome to Freebird Spirit YouTube channel and Wisdom Behind Awakenings discussion number 11. Wow. Well, this must be, oh, and it's 333 here. So this is going to be interesting.
I just looked at it too. It's 533 here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So today, and okay, first of all, hello, everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here, continuing this discussion with us. And if you don't know, this is Chrys. And and we have been having these discussions on awakenings and through many different life experiences and what that means, and do we grab onto awakening through the life experiences and so forth. So, but today I'm excited. We're going to be talking about constructs and boxes and getting at recognizing and getting out of those. I know we've talked a little bit about boxes already, and I feel like it's going to ebb and flow through a lot, but this is more about constructs that have been in place from the beginning of time. And slowly but surely you can see through history it kind of shifting. However, we are still under some massive constructs that have placed on women, especially, well, and men's roles, but it's bigger than that. So what are you thinking right now, Chrys? You're looking at me like, what is she talking about? I thought we were talking about.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm sort of, I'm feeling bombarded with like 40 million examples. And at the same time, I can't think of one. So, it's that kind of, it's like, well, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I go to the grocery store, and the guy waiting on me says, are you off today? Because it's Indigenous Peoples Day. And I said, no, I'm working. And he says, oh, what do you do? And so that's what I had said to you, which is, I don't like saying I teach college because there's all sorts of stuff that comes in that direction. And that's why I was so uncomfortable when you did the credential one. It's like, no, because it has a life of its own,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what a construct is. It has a whole life of its own. It has nothing to do with me, and when we had that conversation, we talked about what did you learn from your education, but it wasn't the education that I referenced, it was the experiences in life. But anyway, this guy says to me, I had a sociology teacher once, and she would get chalk all over her black outfit. And so we started, telling stories and keeping track of all the days when she had chalk all over her outfit. And she finally turned around then and said, why do you care? And that's one of those moments when you realize that something that isn't grounded, something that isn't, or maybe the word's not grounded, but something that isn't in a more positive energy is taking hold.
Yeah. And so why I'd be curious to get a little more of that conversation from him, in that, what did he come up with? Why did he care? Why was it funny to them?
Well, he didn't explain. He looked at me and he went, I mean, essentially it was like, yeah, why did we care?
Yeah.
Now, the store's packed because it's a holiday. So there's like 5 million people standing there. So it wasn't a conversation.
Right.
But, it's just one of those moments. This morning, I'm flipping through YouTube, and I see this thing where, this woman and her dad are going to dance at their wedding. And of course, I'm doing the 3rd edition, right? So
right.
I'll take a look, which is one of those moments. I should say that when I wrote that book the first time, I had to
She's talking, if you're just watching this for the first time, she's talking about her book, The White Weddings, and she's writing her,
yes,
that what?
White Weddings, Romancing Heterosexuality in Popular Culture.
That
There
is,
you go.
that's the book, and she's writing her 3rd edition. All right, go ahead.
So it's funny because I had a neighbor ask me about that the other day. She said, "You wrote a book?" I said, "Yeah." You can't say that stuff, and I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Actually, I've done 3." And she's like, "Well," and and finally I looked at her and went, "I'm an academic and it's part of my job, and you're making excuses." But when you brought up the thing about constructs, it's like wading through something that really has nothing to do with me.
Okay.
Right? It's like they're speaking a foreign language, or I am, whatever it is. This is not who I am. So if I say those words to you, you're going to plug them into something entirely unrelated to what I was talking about. So it's like, okay, how do I navigate that? That's the theme. How do you navigate that? So I'm watching this YouTube, and here's, this woman getting married, and she's dancing with her dad, and then they start doing all these different dances. And I started saying, when I did White Weddings the first time, in order to write about popular culture, I had to watch all that stuff a lot, not just once. I must have watched my best friend's wedding 50 times, the father of the bride 50 times. And what I found that was so powerful was that I could sit and critique it and cry at the same time.
Right.
And laugh and feel, seduced by it, and then write a critique. It was like it's like being 2 people, That's how constructs work, right? You can say, well, I left the church, but then when you walk in the church, all the same feelings come back.
Right.
And you can be critical, but you're sort of sitting there going, oh yeah, but I know how I'm supposed to behave.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I 100%. And another thing with this is we have our own constructs too that we've built, and we've talked about that a little bit already in past ones, but it's other people's constructs that are forced upon us in conversations, in experiences, and like that. How can we live our true self when we are in conversation within somebody else's construct? How do you get out of that? Guys, how do you get out of that? How do you live your true full self without thinking? I mean, I am the worst at it because I want everybody to feel comfortable, right? So I'm gonna dive right in that construct with them to make sure that they feel comfortable.
Which is another construct.
Because
that's a gender construct.
Exactly.
Right?
And,
so there you are.
Exactly.
And a good woman.
That's
right?
My construct is, I need everybody to feel that's what has been put upon me, and to make everybody feel comfortable and safe and like that. I'm breaking out of that construct. I started that this year. Never too late.
When did you do that?
No, I just have decided that, just in little things, like I'm not responsible for how you feel if I wear this t-shirt, right? It's the little things like that will help me start making headway out of the constructs of making sure that everybody else feels okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to feel uncomfortable if I wear this t-shirt. Well,
but look at the work you do. I mean, talk about this in relation to being a psychic medium.
Well,
you're
and
right in the face of the main constructs.
Yes. However, it's not that I don't advertise on my main Facebook page that has 1,800 people on there, mostly from my past life. You know what I mean? Where the church people, my students, and they're all that in there. I don't put them through it. I don't challenge them with my coming out of my construct, right? And so I haven't chosen to challenge them yet. However, people that I will collaborate with, they will tag me in collaborations that I have with them. So I'm I'm slowly but surely being kicked out of the closet, so to speak, even though I'm not the one forcing it upon them. But yeah, because I choose, I'm like, but slowly but surely in other areas for sure that I'm starting to pull out of some of these constructs that were, if you're blind that there's even a construct or, a box or whatever.
Right. That's the intro to sociology. There's a whole theoretical framework in sociology called the social construction of reality. Okay. So when you're teaching intro, you're trying to introduce that concept to students. And when you're introducing it, you're saying, there is this thing outside my window and it has flowers growing on it. Well, it has things growing on it. You don't say flowers. There's things growing on it. It's got these green things that are sort of shaped like this. And it's got this big thing at the bottom. What is that? And they're like looking at me like I'm crazy. And they're like, it's a tree. I said, who said so? And they sort of look at me and they go, what do you mean? I said, somebody named it. Somebody decided this is a category. This is a tree. This is what it means. And if you look at history, you watch all of those constructs shift and change over time, right? So an octopus, right? We used to look at this creature in the ocean and say, ooh, really awful. And oh my God, it's scary. What is it? And then we would give it a name and then we would give it a life. We'd make a movie about this horrible octopus that eats, villages, and then we make a movie called My Octopus Teacher. And suddenly they're attractive. They're full of love. You can have a relationship with one. I mean, all of a sudden we've moved now and we've named this thing differently. But when you say to students, I always play with them with this stuff, it's like, I always say things to them like, so where does the sun set? And they look at you and they go, in the west. I said, no, it doesn't. Earth moves. The sun doesn't set. But can you imagine being out on a date and saying, let's go watch the earth move? That's a whole different mindset, right? So, and then we do this thing about, I went to Africa in my 20s. So I saw a lot of animals and learned a lot about nature. But one of the things that you realize is that, I lost that thread because I went straight over to something else about Africa, but
I'm just curious are you looking at the tree outside your window there?
How did you know? Yeah, no. I know.
I'm looking at the tree.
Oh, you're over here. I'm looking at this beautiful.
You're still looking at the tree. I'm like, wait a minute. She's still looking at that tree.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Anyway, when you're in Africa, you see animals not on TV in their real habitat, right? And you're their guest. So, you're not messing with them. So what we saw a lot was them locking horns. Notice I didn't say fighting. Locking horns, okay?
Locking horns.
So we would see two rhinoceroses locking horns, okay? So the guide would say, they're fighting for dominance of the females. So I would tell students about this and I'd say, how did they know? Did they interview the females? Are you being dominated? These are social constructions. We're bringing it, and you have to understand that that even when we do really legitimate research, particularly like John Ruffgard and Stanford biologists really reveal a lot, because what she showed was how those social constructs shape actual research.
So what she makes visible is that there's a huge amount of variation. Like I said this in one of the other videos, there's a huge amount of variation in nature, in animals, birds, everything. I mean, there's, they shift and change. They don't do this. They don't all do that.
Right.
There's all sorts of ways in which they reproduce or not. Anyway, the what she shows is that biologists, because of social construction, because of the social controls that go with that, they don't tell the whole story. They don't tell the whole truth. So when we start talking about things like what we've talked about before, about things like sexuality, right? About what category are you in? And I've gotten to a place where I don't accept any labels, none.
Exactly.
No, it's like, it's not about the label, it's not about the body. I'm all about the energy and I'm all about love. And that's all there is. That's all there is. And so, and we can say that's a social construct too, but it is what it is. So
I just want to interject real quick here. I think that's breaking some social constructs right there. I think that's helping people with that type of language. We have to start somewhere to break.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you say, well, maybe it's a construct of its own. It could be, but it's breaking some big constructs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
it is. Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important, this White Weddings book, doing the 3rd edition, like I'm not the same person it was in 2008 when I did the 2nd edition. So I'm a little concerned about how that's going to work. But watching this world sort of operate on the basis of these constructs and the comfort and the discomfort that it creates, because it's both, people gravitate to certain things and they feel, oh, this was wonderful and this is great, and they're full of love and kindness with each other. At the same time, what's going on behind the scene, and I wish I hadn't heard so many awful stories about it, but there's also the stories behind the scenes, who people really are. And that's where the power of these social constructs comes in.
I think we, as humans, we have this natural thing to need to understand things, right? So and I know there's more to that, and you might have the language, Chrys, because you're the sociologist here. We have to understand things, and if we only have a story in part, we'll fill it in. We naturally will fill in the blank spaces and create the story. If you tell me a story and you only give me bits and pieces, we automatically fill in those gaps and create a story that feels right to us.
We try to make sense of stuff.
Sense. We try to make sense of things and try to wrap our minds around things.
Make them fit.
Why did that woman drown her 3 children and then kill herself? Why did that happen? And so we have to create these stories to understand and wrap our minds around it, because
I got a better question than that one.
Okay.
Why is that even in the fucking newspaper?
Why is it in the fucking newspaper?
Because the newspaper journalism says if it bleeds, it leads. So I look at that newspaper, or I look at that news story, but it's packaged in with a million other ones just like it, just as horrific. It makes you feel really sad, right? And it also very upsetting, and it also creates fear. And so here we are, what you called natural is being organized.
Because they know how to tag in on our
but you're absolutely correct, because the other question is, why would someone do that? And at the same time, we walk around saying things like there's no such thing as death,
right?
So how do you put those things together?
So the question is, okay, maybe not a question. Let me backtrack there. Recognizing how we construct our day and what are our constructs. Where did those come from? Start to recognize what's happening. I mean, can you recognize, Chrys, any constructs that you currently have that you know are in place?
This one? You mean what we're doing right now? Well, you become the master of the social constructs that shape your own personal life, right? So
Constructs.
but you also have to look at what are the consequences when you don't follow them. So how often you change your sheets.
Right. Oh, so like little rules, like what's the rule on this?
Yeah, totally. It's like it's down to minutia, you know. How do you greet people? Do you lock your door? I'm always amazed, and we've talked about this before, that with being this cancer survivor and having gone through 2 years of hell, how many people want to tell me stuff, but they're telling me, why aren't you doing this, or why aren't you doing that, and here are your rules, follow these rules, and then you get the people who say, well, why are you following medicine, why aren't you doing alternatives? And then the alternatives people say, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's that level of it's more than opinion. It's really operating out of a way in which we've organized the world and organized it so we fit or don't fit, and so we survive or don't survive. And as someone who worked in an ER, you saw a lot of people
Yes.
didn't survive because they weren't following the constructs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, breaking a lot of my constructs, and we've talked about this before too, in regards to safety within some of these constructs.
Yeah.
And, I'm reminded of, so many in the ER, you see the people that in general, besides just you or me going to the ER, there's so many walks of life that come in the ER, and a lot of them are the walks of life that no one wants to see.
Right.
And that breaks constructs.
Right.
Because they're not living how I would want them to live, or doing what I would want them to, what I feel like they should be doing. Well, we need to do better with our street campers. Well, not all of them. That's where some of them want to be there, but we don't. It's like it's like going to another country and saying you have to live like we live because that's the better way. Really, what construct is that from? Right. So you know what I'm saying, everyone.
Yeah, and
so it's like breaking those chains of the constructs.
Well, you just did, because what did you call them?
Street campers.
Street campers. And the other word that's been circulating lately is the unhoused.
The unhoused, yeah. The campers. I call them the campers.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
look at how free they are.
Yeah.
In so many important ways. They're just totally free. But one of the things we do is feel sorry for them or feel repelled by them. That's even worse.
Right.
Yeah. And we do that with a lot of topics.
And so when you have the opportunity, like in an ER, to sit down and have meaningful conversations,
Mm-hmm.
it breaks it. you can't help but break through constructs
Yeah.
and understanding.
Yeah.
And
Thinking about, I think I mentioned to you before, my 20s where I crushed my right arm, and I was in physical therapy 3 days a week. And there was a guy there and a child. Child had pulled a pan of hot water down on his chest. So he had big scars. So their way to get him to stretch the scars was to blow bubbles so that he'd keep breaking the bubbles, right? And the guy was the same age as me, worked for the telephone company, and my dad had worked for the telephone company, and I had worked for the telephone company. So he was very familiar. He was a lineman and he got electrocuted. And he lost both of his forearms. And his legs were totally burned, but he was able to maneuver. He didn't lose them. So we would go into occupational therapy and my arm was frozen. It was frozen like this. It was like like an S shape. So they had to break through all the scar tissue. So this guy had stumps right here. So they had to break through the scar tissue for that so that he could wear a prosthesis. So we're talking super pain, right? Super pain. And, but I'm a kid. I'm in my 20s and I'm looking at this guy who's an amputee. And my previous experience was, ew, feeling really skeeved out and really grossed out by amputees. Ooh, I don't want to look at that. And oh, that's so awful, right? But I transformed in that moment. I mean, talk about awakening,
Right.
I transformed because there was a human being there.
Right.
And we would scream together.
Mm-hmm.
And the therapist would give us little games to play and, to try and break through the scar tissue and to just be able to become healed, right? And then you hear his stories. You hear the stories about how New York Tel wasn't going to help equip, wasn't going to give him disability. They were fighting it. And so they were forcing him to have a house that didn't have facilities for someone who was disabled. And they said, you have to come back to work. So that he said, well, I want to come back to work. So he went back to work, but the minute he walked through the door, his benefits were cut. So, it was one of those moments in life where something happens you didn't expect. And that's when I think the constructs that you're talking about become the most visible.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know how much you're holding on to until there's that level of interruption. Right. And you're like, whoa. And now to this day, I am not affected at all by anyone who's lost a limb I don't look away. I don't, it doesn't have that same physical nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you realize you can shift and you can change and you can let go of that stuff. And somehow find your humanity in the process, somehow find that other energy that sort of makes you peaceful in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking to the person who's a street camper, well, that was a nice conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good. And you walk away and somebody else will be like, what? That person's homeless. Like, no, that's a person.
Yeah. It's not about that part of that, you know what I mean? That's part of this person's situation. It's not that person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those social constructs, those are tough ones. We ebb and flow. Who's in charge of who's the beginning of these social who's in charge of creating this?
I want to talk to who's in charge.
I want to talk to them.
Talk about a construct. That's a great contradiction. It's like, yeah, I want to talk to that person right now. And I want to, yeah, I know. I was doing that this morning. I was like trying to get somebody to pay attention to my student loan because it's so screwed up. And I keep getting anxious about it. And I'm like, see here going, wait a minute. you're going to get a person on the phone, a person, and you're going to talk to them person to person. And you're going to try and sort this out. And, but really, I'm already in the construct of you're the enemy. I'm not. You gotta figure, and you're gonna fuck this up. I know you are.
Right.
Right. And
Yes.
I caught myself in the energy and went, no. This is somebody who took their kid to school this morning and either worked from home or came into an office and sat down, had a cup of coffee, and it's just trying to make their way through the day. Right?
Exactly.
So you sort of go, okay, let's try and do this a little differently. So anyway, we'll see if that works out.
Well, I just know that I'm put in, and I think a lot of the family here will relate. I'm put in a lot of awkward social constructs that I feel like, again, that I have to take care of everybody in whether it's a conversation or, whatever it is. And I set aside my own, whatever it is, belief or understanding to make them feel comfortable, whether it's just a conversation or just a comment, even. If you have a conversation, and again, I'm stepping in a construct. If I'm having a conversation with a gentleman of a certain age, I'm expecting a certain type of response from them because of their construct. No matter if I'm uncomfortable with how they talk to me, I'll allow it because of their age. And that they don't know any better, right? So that's
you just opened up a whole other package.
Yeah, but that's all part of it. That's kind of where I'm at, and I know that everybody has their own. And I'm just learning on how to either step out of that construct and not just step away from it, or what do I need your expertise here, Chrys.
No. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. That's what you're really identifying, is the way in which what we think of as constructs organize how we think about each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as who's a person with long blonde hair? What is that? I'm going to read her by that hair. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Versus who's a person with white hair? I'm going to read her with white hair.
Mm-hmm.
It's not far away from what we've been talking about before: racism, ageism, sexism, homophobia. It's all about the constructs and how we attach to them, but in the sense of it being there's a right way and a wrong way. Right? It goes back to that episode we did about the popsicle mold. And did you use it yet?
Not yet.
I send her a popsicle mold.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's it's unless we can get people to sort of see the way everything we think of as entrenched is because we created it that way. This is, part of, I think, what's liberating about that theory I was telling you about, the social construction of reality, is that you realize you can construct anything. You're free to change it at will if you want to. That's what non-binary is about. We're going to change the language, right?
Right.
Years ago, it was homosexual. Then it became gay. And then people said, I don't like gay. or the comment I think I told you about before, where I was walking with a friend of mine to a women's bar years ago, and a car full of guys drives by and screams, "Queers." And she went, "Yes." In that moment, I became somebody else. Right? I went, "Oh, wow, she's proud. Wow, that's so cool." So you see that those things really work against you. And when you talk about the stuff about a certain age, it's like, I feel like I get that all the time. All the time, you know. Years in 2017, I broke my back. They took me out in a house in an ambulance. I go into the emergency room, and the woman behind the computer checking me in says, "And what pills are you on?" I said, "I'm not on any." She said, "No, what medications are you on?" I said, "I'm not on any." "No, you're not understanding. What are you on, high blood pressure?" "No, I'm not on any." She kept looking. All she could see was the hair, the age, and what I'm supposed to be. And that's what happens to us.
There you go.
We get caught in them, we get stuck in them, and we don't see that person. On the flip side, years ago, I went to the orthopedics place because I had a knee issue. I sound like I'm a mess. I am. Anyway, I go in and she walks in and she says, "Wait a minute. How old are you?" That was before my hair was like that white. But yes, so, you know, it happened absolutely in reverse. You don't look like what your number says. So we get caught there, you know. And I think one of the things I feel bad about a lot are when students who are college age students are sort of trying to figure out who they are, where they fit. And they come in and say to me, "I think I'm a lesbian." And I'm like, "Who cares?" And just one young woman goes, "But I think I said, "Why do you need a name? Do you love the person?" "Yes." "Okay. You know, why do you need a name? What does it have to, where are you going to put that? How are you going to fit?" You know? So yeah, it works, I think, in some really powerful ways.
Yeah.
And some sort of subtle stuff. What you've talked about a lot, about coming out of that era where you felt like you were walking dead or sleepwalking, whatever metaphor you want to use. But yeah, it's I'm stuck in the construct. How do I get out of here? See, that,
how do we get out of it?
How
do we? The consequences of staying in these constructs is missing out on, you know, life and love, possibilities. Yes.
Imagine how rich your life would be. You know, it's like when I would get really upset about the critical race theory campaign, you know, as if, you know. And I went to a gathering a few weeks ago, and one of the people at the gathering saw that I put up on Facebook the picture of my students from critical race theory, who were all different races and ethnicities.
Beautiful.
Smiling and holding each other and having breakfast together and just being as peaceful and beautiful as they could be. And she looked at me and she said, "I saw that picture." And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Chrys, that was so good." I said, "Yeah, don't you want to live in that world?" She's like, "Yes, that's the world I want to live in." Why do we have to work so hard to create a world like that? You know?
Yeah.
That's the construct, right? Why do we have to work so hard to just be pleasant, kind, and accepting to people who aren't us?
Exactly. Which brings me to the point of, you know, a lot of us, especially those who watch my channel, are, you know, you scratch your heads wondering, how can they follow this or that? How can they believe this or that? It's just confounding, you know. But if you take a moment to look at the constructs of our own, guys, and how we're kind of, until we start really looking and being proactive about seeing the constructs in our life, and, you know, what may be holding us from really stepping into that freedom, that they're living out their own constructs. That they're living out in these constructs that have been in place, and they don't see they're in there, and there's places inside us that we don't see either. we
Right.
still don't have insight to.
Right.
We're not there yet.
But that's, I think that's what started this whole conversation, right?
Yeah.
It's about awakening, really.
Mhm.
You know, the more you expand and the more you awaken, the more you realize that we're not separate. We'll go right back to it. Only 4% of what's around you can you access. 96% of everything around you is energy. Your energy. That tree is energy, regardless of what we name it. It's energy. Everything is energy. The field, what allows you to access the psychic medium stuff, the clairs, the clairsentience, all of that. What allows you to do that is accessing all that energy in the field, which travels all the way out beyond
Mhm.
the universe.
Mhm.
It's that's when you start to say, oh, what does it mean to expand?
Mhm.
And what does it mean to awaken once we realize that we're all it? We're it. We're source. We're one. We're energy. We're a part of. We're in the fabric. We're there. And so when you start to talk about constructs, part of what happens, I think, with those constructs, and what's so exciting about the work that you and other people are doing, is shifting them away from that, accessing that part of our existence that is connected to all that field, all
Mhm.
that space, all that energy. And it reinforces the reality that we're all one. You can dance up and down and try and send people to Martha's Vineyard as immigrants. You can do whatever, but it's all, we're all still one. You didn't change anything.
Right.
You can follow Trump, you can listen to his vile stuff, you can hurt your heart more and more and more. We're still all one, and they're connected to all of us,
That's correct. That's what I'm trying to
and
say.
vice versa.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't help. We don't help each other when we continue to keep people there
Yeah.
in those places.
Yeah.
Keep them as homeless homeless people, or
Street campers.
street campers, shifting that a little bit. It doesn't help for us to keep the labels going. However, there is a time, there is a purpose for labels in the moments. But I encourage everybody to expand beyond them. If you have a label for yourself, how can you expand on beyond that label? Because that label literally keeps you within a construct, right?
Mm-hmm.
You said you were uncomfortable about being a professor, that word professor, because there's some construct to it. Yeah. And everybody has a different view of that construct. Yeah. And you never know what you're going to trigger.
Well, I mean, I told you that story before about doing the Ho'oponopono with a student who did it about her brain. And that was so powerful. That was such an important moment, where she apologized to her brain. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I didn't think you were good enough. I'm so sorry that I let anybody tell you you weren't good enough. I'm so sorry that you suffered at the hands of educators who told you your brain wasn't good enough. Please forgive me. I love you and I thank you. I will never let that happen again. And the whole room is transformed. And I became someone else because I stood there and went, and there it is. What we do to each other in the name of education, or not. But I'm here. I'm teaching sociology of education right now, and you realize that what we've created is a structure to create a space where children can all agree with each other. Okay? I mean, I know this is not what you think you're educating your children about, but what we're doing is saying, this is the US of A, this is its history, this is who founded the country, this is 1492, this is, but at the same time, what you're doing is you're graduating young people who've come through that system. You've told them they weren't smart enough, they had a lot to learn. If they didn't show up like some of the main big kids who got straight A's, they didn't show up, they weren't okay. You've done all sorts of stuff like that. And what you graduated were people who would say, oh, in November, there's election day and I'm supposed to vote. Here's the Constitution. This is what our laws are. You've basically give them a common language, right? In the interests of the state, you set up a certain set of rules, right? And of course, this would be a very different place if everybody was educated differently. It would be chaos. So there's that side of it, right? But this is, education as a field. That's why I struggle with saying that. That's why I didn't say to that guy today, I'm a professor. I didn't say that. I said I teach college, because somehow saying I'm a teacher is easier than saying that other thing. And so, but he jumps right into his stories. Jumps right in. Right. And I'm not in school anymore. I didn't like it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Usually comes right after that. So yeah, it's the constructs are difficult, but I feel like I'm very privileged in the sense that I get to work with college students and wake them up.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel better, because I know a lot of people who are watching what's going on in the world, they don't have any outlet. What do?
Yeah.
You get on Debbie's channel and say, so is Trump going to go to jail? Right?
Yeah.
I get to go into a classroom and say, Trump's going to go to jail. So, it's, yeah.
So takeaways today.
Here we it's the takeaway moment.
The
Talk about constructs.
Just beware of the constructs. I don't think we're breaking away from constructs in our generation here in the next 100 years. I feel like there will always be constructs of some sort, but we just need to be aware of the ones that are holding us back from awakening.
I think one of the most important things about that is it's how we treat people. That it's the construct, it's the lens through which we see people and treat them.
Chills on that one.
I was reading Between Two Kingdoms again this weekend. Mostly because my sister keeps talking about it, and she keeps saying people will change how they treat you once they read that book. So I thought, I didn't get that out of that book, so I'm going to go back and look at it again. Well, I didn't read it, I felt it, right? So,
well, you started to read it through your sister's eyes, is what you did. Yeah.
I did, yeah. And it changes. When somebody tells you their real experience, it changes. When you're not looking at it through a set of constructs, you're looking at it with your heart
openly.
It's a different experience.
Yes. And also understanding that when you're having a conversation with someone, they're relating to the conversation through their own constructs. They're not relating to the conversation through yours. So just that awareness alone
Well, I think that's what I was taking from what she was saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it real? No, I mean, I forgot to say that part.
Oh,
It was really, she was saying if people would just read that book, they would treat you differently. And I wasn't getting that, but it does change how you interact with somebody when you have a better understanding of their standpoint.
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chrys, for this great conversation. And to everybody that's here and listening, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. And in this chat, was anything new, and also any constructs that in stepping into awareness of self and the concept of constructs. Did you find some constructs that maybe you weren't aware were there? They could be social constructs. They could be just ones that you've built up for, belief systems and like that. What other constructs should they look for, Chrys?
Well, what you just said made me think of the story that you shared with me about knowing someone who comes out of a more fundamentalist Christian experience.
Yeah.
Confronts Debbie, who's been in their lives forever, who suddenly has a construct that doesn't fit with the fundamentalism. And so now I've got to navigate that. How do I continue to be her friend, her family, her whatever, when the construct I've lived by is totally opposite? I think than who she is. She's following those teachings in a broader, more awakened way.
Ooh.
She's taking the teachings of Yeshua.
Yes.
And I'm going to change that now for me forever, because I'm a survivor of family evangelicalism. So, and I realized that I had sort of taken Jesus out in the process. So now I'm reclaiming him as Yeshua. And saying to myself, what you did was take love and open it wide up and say, I can love whoever. Yeshua wasn't teaching us to only love this person, or only love this way, or only follow this kind of relationship. What comes out of all of that, and I think that's the piece I feel I survived with. I told you as a kid, I'm laying in a bunk bed and I'm carving into the slat above my head. Well, how come we can only love certain people?
Yeah.
It never made sense. My grandfather's a minister. Never made sense to me. Yeah. My sister decides to marry a Catholic. He went nuts. He cornered him in the dining room, sort of saying, Catholics are not good. And I'm going,
wow.
This is the minister?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa.
Yeah.
And then here's the good story. I come out to my mom. Actually, she came out to me because she figured it out on her own. But I thought it went really well. I go home thinking, wow, Mom was smiling. It was going really well. She called the minister of the church that we went to, right? He comes over to the house. She says, oh my God, my daughter is a lesbian. Does that. He says, is she a loving person? She said, well, yes, she is. And he said, then the real sin would be turning your back on her. Right?
Wow.
So there's a moment, right? There's a moment. That's when somebody really does get it.
Wow.
They really do get it.
Wow.
And she could listen to him because he was a minister.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's what I take away.
And in her construct, he had the authority.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Oh no, you don't. Totally nailed it. That is exactly the case. Totally.
Okay, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us during this conversation, and we look forward to doing this again. And we'll see you all next time. Blessings.